is a Cascadoo. It all comes back to Cascadoo. It all comes back to Cascadoo.
What is Cascadoo? It's a collaboration between Anthony Bansfield of Canada and myself. So we discussed the idea for a few years before, and then it was birthed in 2013. Cascadoo takes place in Trinidad, and I'm saying broadly in Trinidad. It is launched at Nales in Port of Spain, and then we go out. We have been to Rio Claro, Separia, we've been to Mova, we've been to Enterprise Shogunas, right? We've been to, like this year, we came to Trin City by Bishops and Trinity College East. So we have been moving around. I remember a poet last year said, Cascadoo is not just the ordinary festival, it's a tour. So we really give those poets, both local and international, that broad aspect or that broad appreciation of Trinidad. And hopefully we'll be going to the video. Cascadoo is usually held in August during the week of the 12th. The 12th of August is International Youth Day. And having been involved in youth work for the past almost 20 years, I have a profound respect for International Youth Day. And I always, once I'm doing something, it must be around that time. Why August? August is globally recognized as what will be your legacy month. And Cascadoo is a way of I, Antima Salwazi, leaving my legacy. Cascadoo is actually divided into two sections. We have panchayats, or community discussions, and we have thematic showcases. The panchayats, we try to bring back that culture of sitting with the elders and sharing. So the panchayats, we will go to St. Jude's School for Girls, the Youth Training Center, YTC, and Credo Foundation. We'll also visit, as I said earlier, communities like how we did Enterprise and stuff like that. This year was the first time we actually had the Peregrinade, the Midnight Rubber, storytelling. We'd usually have the Rapso and normal open mic. But we wanted to showcase what we refer to as our carnival characters, because that is our culture, that is our indigenous oral traditions. And we wanted to share that with our visiting poets. We also have something called Word in the Yard. Now the Panyard is the first community center, the first homework center. It's a place of learning, of sharing, of commerce. The Panyard is the heartbeat of a community. So we are trying in our simple way to bring back the Panyard line. So we want to bring back that Panyard line and expose our international poets to our national instruments. And I must say, that I think is the highlight of Cascadoo.
Introducing the new Apple I person complete with multi-touch and volume control. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Compatible with your iPod and your iPad. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? No friends? There's an app for that. No life? There's an app for that. You're a complete loser. We're working on it. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world has become so digital, I have forgotten what that feels like. It was difficult to connect when friends formed cliques. Now it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me, hoping to book face-to-faces. I update my status, 420 spaces to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my whole wide world will forget that I exist. But with 5,000 friends online, and only 5 I can count in real life, why wouldn't I spend more time in a world where there are more people that like me? Wouldn't you hear? It doesn't matter if I'm an amateur person as long as I have a profile. My smile is 50% genuine, 50% genuine HD. You would need Blu-ray to read what is really me, but I'm not that focused. I got 10 tabs open, hoping my problems are resolved with a 1500 by 1600 resolution, proving we may have made a few missteps in this evolution. Doubled over, we used to sit in treetops, so we swung down to stand upright, then someone slipped a disc. Now we're doubled over at our desktops. From the Garden of Eden to the branches of Macintosh, apple picking has always come at a great cost. iPod, iMac, iPhone, iChat. I do all of these things without making eye contact. We used to sprint to pick and store berries. Now we run to the Sprint store and pick blackberries. It's scary. I can't hear the sound of Mother Nature speaking over all this tweeting, and my ability to feel along with it is fleeting. You would think headphone jacks inject into our flesh to where we turn on, disconnect, power on, until we are powerless. We are love drugged. So we e-trade, email, emotion like e-commerce, because now money can buy love for $9.95 a month. Click to proceed to check out, click to X out where our hearts once were. Click. I'm spending time with my lady. I hope she is logged in. Click. I've sent her this hug. I hope she gets it. Click. I'm spending time with my daughter. Give it up, while she's crying on a conference call, on a Skype in the next room. Click. So when my phone goes off on my hip, I touch, and I touch, because in a world where laughter is never heard and our voices are only read, we get so desperate to feel that we hope our techno logic can reverse the universe until the screen touches us back. And maybe one day it will, when our technology is advanced enough to make us human again.
So I got an email or a Facebook message from MT Masawazi. He just was like, hey, I'm from Trinidad. I do this festival every year. This will be our, I believe, 3rd or 4th installment of it. And he said, here's some people who've come in the past. Would you like to come down and have this experience and work with the youth down here? And it was really a no-brainer. There was this like, oh, all right, going down to the Caribbean, that's cool. Working and doing work that I'm already doing, that's cool. Oh, all of these people from other places and meeting in, mixing from international people converging in a place that they've never been before in an international space. It was just a huge melting pot of, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. And so, I said, yeah, of course, immediately.
What made me agree to come to Trinidad? Firstly, team was very persistent, but it's mainly because a friend of mine came here last year and got involved in the Cascadoo festival, and he really spoke well of it. And then also, I'd never been to the Caribbean, and I thought, what better opportunity to come to the Caribbean than to combine it with an art form that I like and get insight into the performers and the art and the culture out there. I think it's always important, especially at this stage, for what I'm trying to do, to draw as many inspirations from different places to create the art which resonates with people on a mass scale. It's easy for me to draw inspiration from London, but what can I take back from Trinidad that will hopefully impact people in the Caribbean next time I speak or create something?
The only thing I've known about Trinidad is Trinidad James. And so what attracted me to come here, besides the fact that it was in the Caribbean, was just how expressive Mtima was about what he was trying to do, what the festival meant to him, And I was like, yeah, of course, you know, to spread this spoken word, this movement, this moment. I'm just glad to be a part of it.
When Tima asked me in Toronto, he was at the North-South Griot Summit, which was an international summit we had around Pan Am Games. So it was poets from Caribbean, Latin America, Canada, America, and England. And I guess Ntima sort of linked with me there. I don't guess, I know Ntima linked with me there. I wanted to come in particular because I have family here. My mom's from here.
I heard about Cascadoo through Emmanuel Villafano. He's my secondary school friend, and he is closer to Ntima than I am. And he was like, Michael, Ntima want to come for Cascadoo, to come and perform. And we go into St. Jude's and the Credo Foundation and all these places. And for 2015, Ntima approached me directly after seeing me perform for the secondary school slam. And he offered me residency for Cascadoo.
Why you talk like that?
Why you talk like that?
Why you talk like that? With fake bass in your voice. Like you got foundation. Why you talk like that? Speak up. Like police lights on street posts. Up like that. Like surveillance. Can't you see the Cabrini Green projects growing in your esophagus? Talk like you waiting to be gentrified. Why you talk like that? Like coffee, black but not strong, like they coffee. Integrated, obeying the cream. Talk like a playground in your lungs where you hide, park, and breathe, and bravado and belligerence. You native to these West Side Americas. I hear the colonialism in your dialect where you grew up, where you belong. Loose squares is a mantra. Slurred words like liquor stores on the corners of your cheeks. See your tongue crisp and crossed like your mama done raised you on crucifixion. Like you know she pray you never come home in a coffin. Like she know these predators prey more often. You speak like you can make institutions disappear like magic. Like voodoo in your veins, like you dream of New Order or New Orleans. Talk like you immune to this Katrina, this hurricane of injustice. Why your slang move like Mississippi then migrated into your saliva? Dixieline diction stirred in kitchens and pots of collard greens, turkey necks, and sweet potato pie. You sweet talk like you met at the intersection of Arsenio Hall and Fresh Prince. That transit authority, that transition to 26th in California is easy for you. You grew up spitting bars. Taste buds grew up on police brutality dished out in Cook County. You spit like you thirsty, like you been wading in the water of parasites and low income. Your mouth done dried, suppressing all that struggle. The thesaurus in your throat clogs no other word but struggle. In other words, you talk like you never been north, never been freed, like you have a history you aren't allowed to know. Why you talk like that? Like you got something to say.
I began my journey in spoken word as a 16-year-old. And I had always been writing poems, as I think most young people, you know, they write in their notebook, they journal, they talk to themselves. And I was one of those kids, but it wasn't until I got on stage and performed for a freshman orientation. It was a poem about violence in Chicago. A young boy by the name of Darian Albert was hit with a wooden plank in the head. And it was called a videotape, and it was shown over national television. And the only thing that people thought as a solution was to bring in the National Guard, not to invest in that neighborhood, not to ask why this violence is happening. So I wrote a poem. And it was when I performed it at this school that two mothers came up to me and were crying. And that's when I knew this is what I wanted to do.
So in 2006, I found myself in the New Eureka Poets Cafe. It was a really was a really interesting night. I was going through things that people go through. And I walked into this poetry venue, and it happened to be like the best. These 5 poets were the best of the best. I had never seen poetry back to back to back, just so dynamic. And I remember just being really inspired that night to go ahead and try this thing. Eventually, because I felt so moved and impacted by the craft, there was always a lot of talk about it being something that people wouldn't be able to get paid to do. It was this always this discussion of like, if you're a poet, like you just, the joke is like, the first half of poet is poor. And this idea that you can't make a living off of the craft. And I remember the day I decided it. I was in this venue, and like there were literally 2 people. One person who had just mentioned how broke they were gonna be if they were gonna be a poet, and this another gentleman by the name of Ovius Maximus, who I knew and everyone else knew that he was making his way as a career poet. And I remember feeling like I was at a crossroad, right? It was like I could either go this way, listen to what this person just said, or I can figure out what this man is doing and go that way. And so the decision that night was like, I'm gonna figure out how to make this work, because I feel like it's incalculably valuable. You can't put a price on the effect that the craft has on people, the emotional changes that are inspired by way of people who listen to poetry. And so there we are.
I got into spoken word by accident, really. I was listening to a lot of rap. I had just left home, and I was in Halifax, and I was in grad school at the time. And I was, the only black person. There was like one black professor, and he kind of racially awakened me in some ways. So I was seeing a lot of things I hadn't seen before, I guess. And I was listening to a lot of rap to hear black voices in my day, because I was like the only black person like in grad school. And I woke up one morning and I had a whole poem in my head, which sometimes, you're sleeping and you hear poetry, and you're sleeping, you hear music, and you wake up and you're always like, oh, like in your poem, the dream you're writing like an awesome poem, and then you wake up, it's like gone. But this time I had the poem, and I just sort of wrote it all out, and I didn't know what it was, like, so it was kind of like a rap. And I was looking at it, and I'm like, but I don't have a beat, I don't know how to rap. And then, like, sort of literally maybe the next day, I saw somebody in the street, Keisha Monique, and she was like, how come you never come out to the poetry show? And I was like, I didn't know there was a poetry show. And this was sort of Wednesday, and the show was Thursday. So all these things just kind of happened. Like, I had this thing that maybe it was poetry. I saw somebody who told me about the poetry show, and then, like, the poetry show was the next day. So I went and I did the poem. It was called White Neighbors, so it was about, like, growing up in white neighborhoods. And people responded, like, they were, so then I was like, okay, well, other people have stuff memorized. Like, maybe I should memorize something. And then literally that was like in March of 2007. And we were hosting the National Slam that year. So the people who would respond, who's a collective that puts on the shows, which I'm now a member of, but I wasn't at the time, obviously. They couldn't slam. So it was like they were looking for people, and they were like, just slam for the team. So sort of like I started in March. In May, we slammed. I was like team captain. Like, I won the slam, and we won the National Slam in October. So it was like very, very fast. But yeah, it's just like this gift from the poetry gods that never came in.
I've always been an opinionative person. And I guess when you have opinions and you're creative, I've always been opinionative and I've been creative. Now, the perfect medium to combine them, which I didn't know for a long time, is the kind of art form of poetry or spoken word, because it gives you an opportunity to express your creativity, but also a mouthpiece for people to listen to your opinions and your ideas. So I've always expressed my creativity in writing and through stories, etc. Then an opportunity came up when I was in my last year of university to perform on stage, and I kind of just took the opportunity as something to kind of show up, because I was very prideful, like bravado. So I took the opportunity, I performed, and it went down very well. And ever since then, it's always been like, this is how I exist. I have ideas and I have emotions that I like to share with the world, and I need to be creative at the same time. So spoken word just become that tool for me consistently from that point on.
When I was 13 years old, I attended an event. It was Palestine, Israel, the usual politics. And on one side of the street was Israel, one side of the street was Palestine, and there were about 1,000 people on each side. And so I go home, I watched the news, really excited. You know, I had my face painted. I was super excited about representing. And on the news, they had said one side had 5,000 people, and the other side hadn't even made 300 people. And like as a young kid, I was like, no, that's wrong. I was there. I saw with my eyes. We had a big crowd, and why is the news lying about this? Like, of all things to lie about, why is the news lying about the number of people that were there? Like, and it frustrated me so much that literally the first poem I wrote dropped out of my mouth as it was. And I didn't know about spoken word. I didn't know about, Def Jam. I didn't know about stages across the world that hosted exactly what it was that I had written. And I memorized this poem and recited it every single day for 2 years. Whether I was showering or walking down the street, I would say this poem over and over and over in my mind, thinking to myself, maybe one day I will say it to someone. I will say it to those who might need to hear it. And then, Poetry Slam came into school, and one thing led to another, and I got on stage, and there you go. That's how I started. But I wrote initially to address the injustice that was happening. And I was a young child doing so.
Dressing like Bedouins protects us from the sun. Burning fire in the eyes of passerbys, you couldn't imagine the scorch they cast us. Like we are droughts, begging them for rain. The sun is assuming our story. This is the hijacked narrative of a Muslim woman. Dear sir, you do not need to remind me that I am powerful. Like a dam holding it up, you suppressing my flow, sir. Inevitably, I will break, I will crush, I will bury you in your words. I will set fire to the sun, sir. Use every racist raghead remark to remind you that stereotypes are never as good as my stories, sir. You do not need to remind me that I am powerful. Powerful is resilient, girl who gets along despite racist predator. Finger marks on my neck, I had bruised ribs, attacked on the streets of my own home, attacked on the streets of my own birthplace like an endangered species. Sir, I survived, sir, I survived. Where they say Scarved Girl isn't adequate enough, not capable enough to tell her own story. How often do you see one of us in the news? Sir, I keep constitutions on my wrists to remind myself that self-defining me is my right. Sir, these are lessons you don't need to remind a powerful woman. Sir, I am a powerful woman. Sir, I am born woman. Sir, I cry woman. Sir, I walk woman. I bleed woman. I am woman. Sir, I am woman. You do not need to remind me. Sir, you do not need you to speak for me, sir, on behalf of me, and especially over me. Sir, didn't your mother teach you manners? Ask me questions instead of answering them for me. Sir, stop answering for me. I didn't forget how to speak. I don't forget how to speak. I did not replace my tongue with a scarf, sir. In fact, I wear it loose enough not to close my mind, sir. I own a narrative. I speak my narrative, so listen to my narrative, sir. I didn't forget how to speak. You do not need to remind me how to speak. I speak 7 languages, sir. English, Arabic, daughter, sister, wife, mother, and woman, sir. I speak languages you will never comprehend. I bleed languages you will never comprehend. You do not need to remind me that I am powerful. You do not need to remind me I am woman. You do not need to remind me that I can speak, sir. I know what your mother knows. Your mother knows what I know. I practically raised you, sir. I practically raised you. So hold your lips before you interrupt a woman to tell her you know more about her power than she does. You cannot outsource my woman, sir. So let me tell you about power. I promise I'm a good storyteller. I speak in metaphors. I promise you can understand, sir. I'll make you some tea myself, sir. So have a seat, sir. And I will teach you what a powerful woman sounds like.
Yeah, I think spoken word is extremely useful and extremely inspirational. When I was a young person, just to see, it wasn't even just that I thought poetry was this powerful thing. It was that I thought it was cool. I thought it was dope. I saw people on stage expressing themselves, and I wanted to do that. And I think that inspires young people and gets them rejuvenated in education. And so now as an educator, when I walk into a classroom and I bring in a spoken word piece or something that comes out of the oral tradition, out of hip hop, they latch onto it. They may not read, Beowulf or Moby Dick, but they can hear a poem and go, yo, I learned something, or how can I use that to tell people what I have to say? And that is not only useful, but that's extremely, extremely revolutionary to the classroom.
I think the youth find this an important medium because it speaks to their reality, depending on which artist is, and I guess it speaks to them from a perspective which they can relate to. And I don't say it's like the ultimate outlet, I don't say it's better than music, or I don't say it's better than sports. I think there's so many avenues in which youth can be reached, not even just youth, people in general, and I think spoken word is just one of the ones that I've chosen, so I'm more aware of how that reaches people. But I think anything which has a genuine relationship, something that young people can relate to, is always going to speak to them. And I think spoken word is essentially that, because it's like you essentially bearing your soul to them. It's having a conversation with them, and who doesn't relate to a conversation? Who doesn't relate to you speaking to them if you make it personal enough?
So working with the youth, teenagers, I find it really interesting because teenagers are at that place where they've just, hormonally emerged, right? And all of the effort to kind of push away from whatever the normal lifestyle was of their generation, they kind of break out of that. My perspective is that teenagers are like nature's disruptive technology. Like every group of teenagers pretty much feels like, okay, whatever y'all were doing, you adults, is whack. We're gonna make it better. And that's just a very explosive place to be and to work from. So I really enjoy working with teenagers because they already have the inspiration and the impetus to like burst through. It's just now like, well, how do we funnel that and funnel it constructively so that they are able to take that energy and move forward. So teaching with youth at different points, whether it's doing workshops with like Urban Word back in New York, or traveling around to different high schools and things like that. Just seeing that kind of energy budding is a really strong place of interest for me.
Well, I teach, but I'm also part of an organization. It was started by a man named Sobaz Benjamin. It's called In My Own Voice, I Move. And what it is using arts and people telling their own stories, really in order to rewrite the pathways of their lives, to not have the story that is given to you about, if you're abused, you're going to turn out to be an abuser, or if you grow up poor, you don't have a chance to be anything. So all these narratives that are given to people, and we really encourage people to use the arts, filmmaking, poetry, rapping, music, to tell their story and find their voice. And it's been very powerful in terms of, there's so many people in prison and stuff who are writing all the time. I always say prisoners are like the last letter writers in society. They're not on email, so they write. I know guys that are like serious gang leaders, like people, and they'll be like, well, I have a poem, I write short stories. I went to Grand Valley Institute with women, and people had entire novels they'd written, and they said, everyone thinks that just because we're in prison we're nothing, and they don't even know what we do with our time. So that's what we do, is really just encourage that and then use that to relate to people. We have a music studio in our community center. We do tenancy. Our outreach coordinator, not youth outreach, just outreach, is a woman called Deb Paris. She's just fantastic, cooks lunch every Friday for the whole community. There's crafting club. So she's really sort of taken it to the next level. So anything the community needs, we're basically needs-based programming. We don't say this is what you have to do. We don't tell the youth, you know, you can't come in if you're wearing a hat, or you have to show up on time, or this program runs this time. It's really driven by what people want, and whatever they want, we basically try to support them in doing, and it's been successful because that's your voice. We allow people to find their way. You know, we don't stop people from doing lyrics about killing people. If they want to come and do a lyric about shooting someone, that's fine, but we'll talk to you about it. And then the youth start policing themselves. So there was one kid that came in, and he had this whole lyric, you know, bust through the door, leave your head on the floor, and all this stuff. And I was kind of like, ugh, you know, but I didn't really say anything. And one of the youth saw that, and he took me aside and said, you know, I don't do lyrics like that, and don't worry. And, you know, like actually was now sort of speaking to me about not to worry about him and comforting me in a sense, you know, and then sort of himself recognizing what it meant to be positive, but not because anybody had said, you can't say this, or you can't cuss, or you can't do this. They start to recognize, I think, what they feel is productive and positive because they're seeing examples of it without being told.
Everything black women got, white women want it. Can't let us have nothing, they gotta go cop it. Pirate it, lighten it, and Photoshop it, then act like they were the first to drop it. Then they sell us back the fake, like we gotta go shop it. Slap a label it and advertise with a white woman on top of it. And foolish black women go broke, spending thousands out of pocket for some vanilla copy that used to be chocolate. Remember when nail art was considered ghetto when women of color rocked it? Then white women discovered polish and press-ons, and suddenly all the fashion writers blogged it. It's always ugly on us until white women co-opt it. They've even gone so far as to make adopted black babies a hot accessory. On us, ugly pickaninny. On them, gorgeous celebrity. Black woman have kids. She's a drain on society. White teenager knocked up. Put her on reality TV. Do I even have to mention booty pop panties? Big asses? On us, we're fat and sloppy, hot and taut, soft bottom, put her in a cage and lock it on them. They act like it's next to godly. Every round the way girl on the block got Kim Kardashian's body, but on her, it's sexy and exotic. And on us, it's ugly. And ain't no black woman shaking her ass. Damn near be named Time Magazine Newsmaker of the Year in history. They'll practically throw us in prison for stripping, but they throw millions at Miley. Dark skin. On us, it's disgusting, and they market us bleach. On them, tanned and healthy, like you came from the beach. Big lips. On us, they say we're thick-featured. Same lips on Angelina. What a beautiful creature. And don't think we didn't notice when Adele stole R&B from Aretha, because everything black women got, white women gotta go thief it. Black women wore weaves. We're artificial and synthetic. Then white women discovered extensions. A luscious, full-bodied aesthetic. Black woman cooks. She's a mammy Aunt Jemima. White woman cooks. Give her a hit cooking show on prime time. And what is this Belfie hashtag business? A white woman takes photos of her ass and they add whole new words to the dictionary. Like we need a whole new language to proclaim her as visionary. Black model with ass? Too fat for the industry. Everything that's common on us, they act like on them is extraordinary, and attention, white people who decide word of the year. Twerking did not come into existence at the moment some white woman arrhythmically gyrated her pseudo booty at the MTV Awards. I mean, I'ma let you finish, Miley, but Africa has the best twerking of all time. I thought in this society stealing was a crime, but then we've always been stolen African property. So they just keep on jacking us at every opportunity. I'm tired of this lunacy. Why don't white people choose something like welfare queen to appropriate? There's actually more white people on welfare, so that's actually accurate. Or ghetto, that was originally white. Let them take that back. Or let them have slavery, police brutality, the 3 times higher likelihood of dying in a domestic dispute, high blood pressure due to racism, or no jobs if they really want to be black. Let them take that if they want to cherry pick our culture. Let them take the struggle with the style while they're circling like vultures. And no, white people, just because your skin is dry does not mean it is ashy. And if you didn't comb your hair today, it's knotted or tangled, not so nappy. Stop using black slang to describe every feature you think is ugly or undesirable, like everything black must be negative. You don't hear black people saying, my skin's feeling so Aryan, or my hair is looking so blonde, when we need an adjective look. I remember when Amy Winehouse was Macy Gray, Blurred Lines when it was written by Marvin Gaye, and Destiny's Child before the white and blonde with plastic surgery on her nose having white beauty standards Beyonce. I remember when Sex and the City was Waiting to Exhale, before Orange was the new black, the old black was just black woman in jail. Everything Madonna did came from black gay males, and it was their mamas who taught them to flaunt it because everything black women got, white women want it. I remember crop tops on Janet long before Britney, Harlem before the Harlem Shake when it was a black literary renaissance. Nella Larson was passing long before Lena Dunham was whitewashing girls in Brooklyn. Isn't Lady Gaga just Grace Jones with white skin? And isn't every raunchy white female artist just jacking Lil' Kim? Hell, crack used to be black before Rob Ford smoked it. That's the Toronto mayor. Just ask Whitney if crack is racially coded. I remember when American Idol was coming live from the Apollo, and like everything else we had, white people stole it and took all the credit when it exploded. So sisters, my sisters, don't get sold on this. When they're holding up their images, only fool's gold, they want us to believe it's ugly on us, and on them, it's cute. So when we devalue ourselves, they can swoop in and loot, trick us into worshiping them instead of our roots. So sisters, don't get played. Your hair, your body, your skin, no matter what the size, texture, or shade, are beautiful, beyond limitation. Stop trying to put onto some pedestal some pale imitation got us brainwashed into hating ourselves. It's a goddamn shame when the African woman is the original creation.
Like we learned, we went to this workshop where they allow people from whatever age, from 8 to 80, to come and learn musical instruments. And they had a bunch of steel pans, and we all learned how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? The reason why that was significant to me as a bookend was, one, the resilience of creating something new and breaking cultural boundaries was basically the first thing that I met when I got here at the island. It was like, boom. This is something that we can be proud of, that or this aspect of our pride comes from the idea that we create from what seemed to be something to be thrown away and discarded and tossed away. We made it beautiful, and in turn changed the way the world sees music, right? And then at the end, to be able to participate in that and play something myself with others, the concept of why we actually do this work. We take things that are discarded, we take things that are thrown away, tossed away, our sense of emotional states of being, our whatever it is, our dreams, our goals, our hopes, sometimes we can just toss them to the side. But being able to take those things, grab them back, and pound the pavement, pound the effort, pound whatever that needs to be pressed into or impressed upon to make something beautiful. That to me represented not just the experience or encapsulating the experience of being here in Trinidad, but the experience of being creative at all. And so that really moved me in a way that gave me a perspective about the craft now that I hadn't had before so clearly.
There's so many memories that I've made here that are absolutely incredible. But I think my favorite moment is when we pulled up to the steel pan yard and I see these 5, 6, 7-year-old kids playing this ginormous instrument, bigger than them, like pros. It was so beautiful. They were so adorable. And I think for that to be so a part of the culture is just, again, it's beautiful, especially when I come from a city like Chicago, where sometimes 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds have to worry about coffins rather than making music.
The first night of Cascadoo, the Monday night, there was a workshop where all the international poets would come together and conduct a session with members of the public.
One specific moment during the workshop when a lady came to recite the poem that she'd written during the exercises. Malcolm London had kind of encouraged people to be intimate with their poetry and write things which were personal to them. And I think the lady really got in touch with herself. So when it came to the group sessions and she started performing her poetry, she actually started crying. You know, she broke down and she was crying. And I mean, we had to encourage her to finish the poem. But at the end of the poem, I felt like she had a sense of relief and a sense of kind of like finality in the issue. But that moment specifically stood out for me because it showed the impact of spoken word if it's given to people in a context which they can apply it to their own lives, you know. Sometimes when you perform, it's just you performing and them consuming, but performing and giving an opportunity to perform back, it yields results like that where people are emotionally engaged with you, you know.
Like one of the girls after I did my poem, she came up to me, she was too shy to talk, and she just slipped me a piece of paper and it said, you know, I was really inspired by your poem, like, thank you, you know. And then she like ran away kind of thing. Like she didn't even want to talk, but she gave me this little note. Another of the girls was in my sort of section of the workshop, and she wouldn't read what she wrote, but she handed me the notebook, and it was a whole poem about how her brother was shot and she was abused, and you know how she'd been molested and all these things. And it was the most beautiful poem, and she let me read it out loud. And then everybody was so moved by her that people were, especially some of the old people in the workshop, were really like, you have talent, you know, and she'd never written before. And that was really, for me, the favorite part. Like, you know, when you see, especially for me as a woman, you know, with young girls, like, you obviously have that special, like, feeling for them in terms of, you know what they're going through, and it hurts you, I think, especially, you know, as a black woman with young black girls, you know, and seeing when they're in pain and they're in struggle. So when you can connect with them and give them something and make them feel loved or significant, you know, that's powerful, because that, more than anything, you know, when you see those girls, you know, it's you too, you know, like, that's who you are. So anytime that, you know, they're getting something, and like, that's the most beautiful thing.
Right now, there is a kid finishing parents' evening in a heated discussion with his mother, saying, why does he have to study subjects he will never ever use in his life? And she will look at him blank-eyed, stifle a sigh, think for a second, and then lie. She'll say something along the lines of, you know, to get a good job, you need a good degree, and all these subjects will help you get a good degree. We never had this opportunity when I was younger. And he would reply, but Mom, you were younger a long time ago, like a Tima. And she won't respond, although what he implies makes perfect sense, that society's needs would have changed since she was 16. Instead, she will ignore him, grip his hand more sternly, and drag him to the car. But what she won't realize is she won't lie just to shut him up. Not because they were just returning from parents' evening and an argument in the hallway would look bad on her resume. Not because she just spent the last 1 hour convincing a stern-faced teacher that she will ensure that her child studies more at home. No. She will lie simply because she does not know any better herself. Although her whole adult life she has never used or applied Pythagoras' theorem, pathetic fallacy, and still does not know the value of X. She will rely on society to tell her that her child, who has one of the sharpest minds in the school, is hyperactive, easily distracted, and wayward. Listen to this chorus. It says, when there are options, why do you stifle me? Because I'm reaching for mountains and you're still trying to hinder me. I can't sing, so I've got someone else to sing it to me. That's the real talk. But the words I want to resonate, because in this reality, you create your own story. And don't let anyone ever dictate that to you. Whether it's an exam board, whether it's an institution, whether it's a religion, don't let anyone do that for you, because exams are society's methods of telling you what you're worth. But you can't let society tell you what you are. Because the same society that tells you that abortion is wrong, but then looks down on teenage parents. The same society that sells products to promote natural hair, looks and smooth complexion, with the model on the box half Photoshop as fake lashes and hair extensions, with pastors that preach charity but own private jets, imams that preach against greed but all fat, parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is, with governments that preach peace but endorse wars. If they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, why do they increase the fees every single year? I believe Miss Jefferson when she took me into her office and said that my exams would be imperative to my success, because we was taught to always follow when Miss Jefferson led. Then I took Jefferson out of the equation, learned to think for myself. I realized we was taught to always follow when misled. You got to think for that, that's like that was something she had to do. We was taught to always follow when misled. Listen. When there are options, in this world there's going to be people that are going to tell you that you can't do this and you can't do that. I was at the Steel Pan yard the other day, big up the Steel Pan. And these little kids were doing the most amazing things. They were playing Frozen and shit on the little tins. And I was like, they're able to do that because someone told them they can do it. Big up the instructor just there. You know? But where I'm from, kids are not taught that and they're not nurtured. But they can test us with tests, but the finals are never final. Because they never prepare us for the biggest test, which is survival. And what I suggest is fairly outlandish, so I don't expect everybody to understand this, except for the kids who knows what it feels like to be worth no more than a D or an A on results day. The ones whose best stories were never good enough for their English teacher. Or the kid at the back of the class who thinks, why am I studying something that doesn't fuel my drive? But then when confronted with a maths problem, his eyes come alive. So this one is for my generation. The ones who found what they were looking for on Google, followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, and accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts. This one's for my unemployed graduates. This one's for my sales assistants, cashiers, and cleaners with bigger dreams. Because the purpose of this poem is not to create a debate, but to let people know that whether you're 16 or 25, 30 or 55, or even your age, you should not let anyone, I said you should not let anyone in this world or any other decide your fate.
Coming to a country where spoken word and the oral tradition, through calypso, through the extempo, all these different things that people have, even with stick dancing and you have the chants and stuff, it's still an indigenous part of the culture and it's vibrant. And so when you hear people doing poems and stuff, they come out of a culture where there's still an understanding that poetry in whatever form has an obligation, a connection to society, and that's really powerful. So I don't know that anybody needs to bring anything to the culture, but I think it's really important to kind of honor your roots and honor your traditions and what your community needs from you. And Trinidad has that.
Historically, spoken word has always been the lowest, what I would consider the lowest hanging fruit creatively, right? Because everyone has a mouth and everyone learns a language. And we have told stories forever. Traditions before we wrote things down, and there are still cultures who refuse to write things down. They told their stories. Beowulf, the Iliad. I mean, as big as those books are, you would try to imagine that someone had all of that in their memory. And so spoken word, I'm wondering if it's a matter of there being a space for spoken word as much as it is a revival of the oral tradition, in the sense that what would be lost if we stopped talking? What about Trinidad would be lost if we just decided, if everyone here just decided to stop talking, to stop passing on stories from one generation to the next? What would be lost if everything just got reduced to hashtags and acronyms on, over text messaging, right? And so there's this sort of, I would imagine that there would be this necessity. It's not even like a question of if there's a space, but the question of like, where are the spaces? Like, please.
So looking forward, Cascadoo 2015 and beyond, what do we have in store? Cascadoo is evolving. It has evolved from 2013, 2014 to this year. For starters, next year we are having poets from Australia, Brazil. We're keeping our mix from UK, Canada, and the US. We want to bring one from Jamaica and all this for next year, Cascadoo. And we would like to maintain that collaboration we had with the 2 Cents movement. It's a work in progress because it's 2 organizations coming together to host this event in terms of working together. So we want to explore or continue exploring that relationship. Even so, we want to extend where 2 Cents usually have a poetry slam for teenagers or secondary schools and one for a national. We are hoping to extend the Artist in Residence program to those participants. So we are looking at different ways of improving the program and opening it up now to more young people. We are keeping our focus on YTC, St. Jude's, and Credo Foundation. But we want to open up to other young people to get involved. And we'll use the 2 Cents movement and other organizations in terms of building that collaboration moving forward. In 2017, we'll be celebrating 5 years. We have already planned and started to prepare for South-North Griot Summit 2.0. So we're hoping to have that conference in Trinidad. We're going to bring back all the poets from 2013, 14, this year and next year, plus more. So we are looking at, the last tally we had was over 30 international poets convening in Trinidad and Tobago. We want to extend to Tobago because most of the times when you have something, it's in Trinidad. We forget Tobago, we forget South. So, as I said, Cascadoo is evolving and we're trying our best to, as it evolves, to grow with it.